I love the sauna. My bad. Sauna. So stupid. Okay. In fact, I would say I'm borderline obsessed with going to the sauna. I would give your old uncle with back problems, who spends more time in the sauna than with his wife, maybe even the Finns themselves, a run for their money. So let's talk about it. Today we're diving deep into the nuanced history of sauna, beyond the most cited tale of the Finnish pioneers. What I found during my research led me down a rabbit hole of sauna lore dating back to ancient times, spanning not just dozens of cultures, but many of the continents as well. Nobody knows for certain when or where the practice of sauna truly began. The first person, or peoples, or Neanderthals, to participate in something resembling it, which in simple terms is deliberately exposing oneself to acute heat in a controlled, enclosed environment for an intentional period of time. Like many primitive practices, it is difficult to precisely pinpoint its origins. Can we say for certain that sauna as a concept only began as far back as the archaeological evidence that we've discovered? Can we say for certain that the Finns were the very first people to integrate this practice into their lives, and continue it for at least the course of a generation or two? Of all the tribes, villages, towns, and societies that have come and gone, even before recorded history, almost certainly not. It's not hard to imagine, if we put ourselves in the shoes of those that came before us, knowing what we know about humans and their knack for rituals in relation to nature and the elements, that an act as simple as containing and controlling heat and smoke, and then reaping the benefits of said environment, is perhaps some inborn knowledge. It wouldn't be hard to imagine a setting similar to sauna. I made a whole bit out of the pronunciation of that, and I don't even know if I'm saying it right, so let me know. Sauna? Sauna? Sauna. Sona. Sauna. Sony Enterprise Ltd. Sauna. It wouldn't be hard to imagine a setting similar to sauna taking place more than once over the course of pre-recorded or forgotten subsects of human history. Certainly for the vast majority of our species, who spent much more time exposed to the elements and less time in front of screens, with the comforts and distractions we are also used to and dependent on today. I'm willing to bet at least a few of our ancestors came to the conclusion of something resembling a sauna for the sake of heat, solitude, spiritual practice, etc., and enjoyed the experience enough to replicate it. However, the written origins of sauna, as we know it today, generally account for how far back in the past we can tangibly trace sauna as a frequent and preserved activity, as a tradition, so to speak. Which leads me to the first and by far most famous account for sauna history. Finland is a country located in northern Europe, resting on the outer edge of the cluster of countries that make up the Nordic region, not to be confused with Scandinavia, consisting of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, despite cultural similarities and an entangled, tumultuous history. Today there are over 3 million saunas, almost 2 million of them privately owned according to a 2022 Statistics Finland report, in service for the 5.6 million population, almost outnumbering the total number of registered passenger vehicles on the road. From middle managers to the wealthiest CEOs and most powerful politicians, some of the most consequential decisions are made in the sauna, found in parliament and offices alike. Here, high-stake political issues find a compromise across the aisle, whereas in the sauna, raising one's voice or being confrontational are forbidden. Finland even boasts an annual sauna week, during which mobile sauna parades are held, and people open up their private saunas to the invitation of neighbors and strangers. Considered the birthplace of sauna, it is here where we have traced the most concrete evidence of the origins and evolution of sauna culture and practice as we know it. Finnish sauna's roots take us back over 10,000 years ago. At first, they resembled a pit sauna, literally a pit dug into the ground with a pile of stones at the bottom, which was heated with a campfire. Once the stones had warmed up, the pit was covered with wattle, thatch, or peat, and then the water was thrown onto the stones to create steam. More modern sauna practice began to take form as far as we can tell around 2000 BC, with wood-structured huts and fire stoves onto which water was thrown for the steam, and vasta, leafy birch branches, are used on oneself or others to promote circulation and waft around a woody aroma. Some adjacent cultures may closely resemble the ways of Finnish sauna, while others may involve more or less heat, steam, or branch whacking. Sauna is not just an important aspect of life and culture in Finland, but basically all Nordic countries to varying degrees. Denmark, Norway, Sweden, and Iceland, where other terms like bastu or sauna may be used, as well as the Faroe Islands, Greenland, and Åland, the Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Russian and Ukrainian banyas, which lean more towards steam room, South Korean jjimjilbangs, and Turkish hammams. The ancient Greeks and Romans, the latter inspired by the former, with their public baths and the philosophy around them, where bathing rituals were considered basically an art form. The list goes on, all with their own ideas of how the experience should be. Some prioritize dry heat over steam or vice versa. Perhaps the Greek and Roman examples display the biggest difference, with a heavier emphasis on bathing facilities, known as thermae, alternating time in pools of cold water in rooms called frigidariums, to warm soaks in the tepidariums, to hot soaks that lived in rooms called the caldariums. However, although less of the star of the show, hot air and steam were an important aspect of the bathing atmosphere in sections coined laconicums. I couldn't really find a definitive answer or picture of whether or not this was like just a room of steam or a bath in a room where the air was full of steam, but bathing was still intrinsic. I believe bathing was still intrinsic to a laconicum. You'd be sitting in a body of water in a very steamy room, essentially. Many of the cultural implications resembled something similar to the Finnish sauna practice, but with more of an emphasis on the gaudy architecture and the man-made might associated with these institutions, the great baths, in contrast to the innate appreciation for nature and simplicity that is intrinsic to Finnish culture. Similar still in the way that the ancient baths, like the saunas and recreational centers of past and present day, have been a place where social status and class melt away. A connotation to a deity or higher power or energy was near universal, and the benefits to physical and mental health were not just anticipated, but accepted as medicinal fact. Even outside of the Nordic and Baltic regions, sauna has taken form in parallel ways across many cultures around the world throughout history, beyond the geographically frigid societies where one may expect a population to ritualize the practice of escaping the cold and embracing the heat. Sweat houses dating back to the Bronze Age, beginning around 3300 BC, are being unearthed not only around the United Kingdom and Ireland, but also throughout the ancient Islamic world, and where the cultures of North American and Mesoamerican indigenous peoples once thrived. Having taken form also in Japan, where natural caves were utilized as sweat lodges, which eventually turned into bathhouses found next to temples or monasteries. As explained by Emma O'Kelly in her book, Sauna, the Power of Deep Heat. Great book. Highly recommend checking it out. She writes, every culture, through every age, has enjoyed its own form of sweat bathing. Heat therapy has stood the test of time, waxing and waning in popularity, and crossing continents in various iterations. The Finns, who recognize sauna as a place for physical and mental relaxation, restoration, and retreat, still remember and continue to practice a relationship of providence with the sauna. The Finnish sauna history dances with the divine often, as the ancient Finns worshipped the four elements like the indigenous populations overseas were doing paradoxically throughout the centuries. The sauna was considered a microcosm, which contained all three levels of the universe: the heavens above, the earth within, and the afterlife below. The Kalevala, a famous collection of Finnish poems and folklore, cements not only sauna's overwhelming role in the country's culture, but the connotations the practice holds to higher powers, and a past of sort of a witch hunt that went on in the late 19th century. Many Finnish children remember, maybe less than fondly, warnings of Sauna Tontu, the one-eyed elf who watches to make sure everyone behaves properly while in the sauna. In 1890, Finland declared folklore illegal, and stigma around the spiritual aspects of sauna spread. Perhaps this is why sauna took on a more practical, mortal culture, with damper undertones of spirituality throughout Finland. Maybe the quiet nature of Finnish peoples overall made continuing on with these sacred rituals in private easy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I doubt the law were going around banging on the doors of saunas to make sure nothing folklorish was taking place. Or maybe they always practiced in subtle and private ways. They retained it, however, and it carries on to this day as part of their persisting zeitgeist. The more outwardly ceremonial practices of other cultures, such as sun dances and potlatches, which would often follow the sweat lodge ceremonies of Indigenous Canadians, were much less understood as a whole and much more avidly pursued by external influences as the world changed inconceivably during the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. As an example from here at home, all three were outlawed during the potlatch ban of 1885 to 1951, at an attempt to water down much of these traditions to a mere chapter in history. As efforts of resurgence followed the decades after the ban was lifted, much of the practice and its routine involvement in the lives of these cultures was lost here for some time, as was much more. A distinction that I've picked up on during my research is that the origins of this practice referred to as sweat lodges or houses or rituals seem to imply that in these parts of the world, the spiritual and superstitious connotations were more dominant than the physical and pragmatic connotations with sauna history. I'm not sure. Let me know if I've missed the mark there or if I'm picking up on that correctly. However, there has always been an immense overlap in sauna sweat lodge history when it comes to both the physical and intangible or spiritual benefits. Meaning, for example, the indigenous North American and Mesoamerican populations who utilized sweat lodges predominantly for spiritual purposes, whereas ceremonies, celebrations, and aspects of funerals took or do take place, still enjoyed the physical health benefits of the environment and the mental health, or whatever they would refer to that state of at the time. However, there has always been an immense overlap in sauna sweat lodge history of both the physical and intangible or spiritual benefits, meaning, for example, the indigenous North American and Mesoamerican populations who utilized sweat lodges predominantly for spiritual purposes, where ceremonies, celebrations, and aspect of funerals took or do take place, they still enjoyed the physical health benefits of the environment and the mental health benefits that this liminal space provided, and vice versa for, say, the Finns. I simply want to recognize and make clear that the ritual of sauna is important to a lot of cultures around the world and has been for a long time. Not just one, not just Finland, not just a few. Essentially, it seems to be a universal part of the cultures of most past civilizations. Comment below and tell me what I got right, what I got wrong, and what I missed. As sauna continued to spread throughout the world, revealing its past in archaeological and anthropological discoveries, or gaining influence in the postmodern, globalized era, where we are lucky to share ideas, culture, and history across oceans with ease, Finland never lost its pioneering sauna spirit. The Matos Company, with a rich history thanks to its part in the war manufacturing effort and known predominantly today for its steel cookware, was a Finnish business originally founded for the mass production of metal products. It brought to market the first factory-made electric sauna heater in 1938. Up into the 80s, many entrepreneurs were granted patents for improved upon heated electric stove concepts. Things really took off when the science of insulated and heat-storing electric stoves were curated. This new technology made saunas easier and cheaper to produce, install, and maintain all around the world, all while reducing the cost and risk of fire. It is thanks to this invention that saunas were able to permeate spas, gyms, hotels, and homes at a much faster pace for the second half of the 20th century. If this video makes you somewhat interested in sauna to the point of doing some research yourself, you may find that the answer to who invented the modern sauna is credited to John Harvey Kellogg, one of the Cereal brothers. Yeah, those guys. The ones who thought masturbation was incredibly dangerous and derogatory to the body, mind, and soul, and promoted the consumption of bland foods and circumcision of boys as a remedy. Well, Kellogg did invent an early prototype of the well-known heat therapy that we call infrared, putting a new use to incandescent light bulbs. It was not until the 70s when Japanese doctor Tadashi Ishikawa invented the first far infrared heater using a ceramic heating element, ushering in the efficiency and health benefits associated with infrared saunas today. I have a lot to say about the United States' tendency to take credit for inventing things or philosophies which actually possess a much longer and nuanced history, but like the Kellogg brothers themselves, that's a topic for another video.